Yeah. No, no, big lad, because I've got it in here. Might be back. From my side, I think I'm back. From my side, I lost internet completely for a little while there. Please do let me know if I seem to be back for you now. Pop a message in the chat to let me know if you can see me and if you can hear me. I think I just lost internet for a little while there. I think I'm back too. Hello, Mariana, thank you. Don't know what happened there. It seemed to go down for a little while. We're back. Yeah. Hello, Laura. Back now. That's good. Yeah, we're back. I don't know what the problem was. But I think it was over here. I had a problem here. So I'm thinking that will probably work for the drawing out. So I'm going to put a light note in for the highlight on the little jar, as I usually do. You'll be used to this if you've seen me start a painting like this before. So I'm just getting a bit of kitchen roll and dipping it in terps, just to mark my very lightest point. What yellow is that next to my ochre? This one here is Cad Yellow. In Winsor and Newton terms, that would be Cad Yellow Pale. This is Michael Harding Bright Yellow Lake. Yellow Lake. PY74, sometimes called Hansa Yellow. And this is Michael Harding Bright Yellow Lake, PY3. Thank you, Ruth. Probably not too far off. These are, I don't think you're the only one, but most people will be. I stream to the Art of Calm group and to my personal profile at the same time on Facebook. So I've got three. I'm streaming to three places really. Those two, and YouTube, and I think most people end up catching it on my personal profile, which is where most of the comments tend to happen. So you're not the only person watching, Lisa, but other people are watching in a different place, I think. Good morning, Brian. Yeah, John, yeah, what do they say? The most important thing is a strong start. Which is why I work so slowly these days at the beginning. I'm going to drop this chroma in the background, I think, a little bit, because I think that's going to end up too high, and I think I'm going to do it by painting it more neutral into it or over it. So I really want to see this relationship, the yellows, you know. Now, although a while ago, if I tried to paint these dandelions, I would immediately have gone in trying to do the petals. I'm not going to do that this time, because lately I've been painting just general shapes of light and shadow and not worrying about detail at all. Just concentrating on getting those, the general light and shadow right and in the right place, and then I find that quite often it needs very little detail in order to be convincing. So this here, I'll tell you what this is actually in Munsell terms. This chip is 7.5 y 812. It's a value 8. It's chroma 12. It's high. I just got paint on it. It's high chroma. So that would be like the light part of the outside. And I imagine it's fairly close to this paint out of the box. Yeah, slightly lower value. Let's try this one, which is PY74. That's more orange yellow. So what I would be inclined to do is to take this down a little bit. I can use that pretty much on its own for any real highlights, for the lightest parts. The local, I'll bring the value down a little bit so I can bring in, I'm interested in matching this chip. This is a bit of Michael Harding green gold to bring it down just a little value, which will probably make it a bit too green. Does, the value is the same as the chip and the chroma is the same. It's very slightly too green. So I'd want to swing it back a little way. Which I'm going to do with Cad Yellow. Now the reason I'm choosing this is because it's more orange yellow than I want. It's the right value, it's high chroma. So I'm not going to lose any chroma if I swing the hue back a bit with this. Yeah. Then for the very lightest parts of it, I'll just use that. And I'm mainly interested in this flower over here, you know, because that's where it's all happening. So I'm squinting right down, and I'm gonna ignore the petals and just paint the shape. Because I just want to know how this colour is going to work against everything else. In particular, this is where I can kind of decide about the background. Value of the background. Over there it's bending away into shadow, but here it's still light. And what I'll probably do to make the petals is cut into it with the background colour rather than... So if it's going over into the shadow, it's going to be slightly lower value. It's still pretty much the same hue though. There's not much change. Just the edges it's curving away, so it's going into shadow. So I want to make it like a form, a blob that works first. In the middle, now you could say this is a warmer yellow, but I would prefer to say it's a more orange yellow because it's much more specific. And I want something like this, a slightly higher chroma, and I want lighter value. I'm probably going to go, let's see, I think this is 2.5Y. Yeah. Slightly orange yellow. So this is the next value up and the highest chroma you can possibly get in the Munsell book. And that's just about the same as my Cad Yellow. So I'm actually going to use, for the center of it where it's pointing to the light, it's going to be higher chroma and lighter than the local. I'm actually going to use that. Very, very rare I would do that, use a colour straight from the tube. You can see how close a match that is. And I think that's going to prove to be one of the distinctive things about dandelions is the change in hue of the yellows from the outer petals to the inside. As much as the shape. So against that, to make that really stand out, I think I want a darker background there. Hello, Anne. I think you're the first person who's ever joined me from Corsica. Which is very cool. Oh, my camera is really blown out. I'm going to bring down the exposure. The sun is coming around. Actually, the sun's coming into the studio now. Starting a later stream today, and not long into the stream, immediately the sun starts coming into the studio. So let me bring down the exposure of this so it's closer to what I'm seeing. I think that's probably closer. See, I think I want lower chroma, darker background around here, just to help this dandelion really stand out here. And it has a very angular shape. So I'm using this, I call them chisel flats, it's a synthetic flat. This is Winsor & Newton Scepter Gold. Just to kind of try and get these sharp kind of edges here. I can't reach the colour that's in the subject. I know I can't, so I know I have to compromise. So I'm trying to find a value balance for the picture that's going to help this daffodil here to stand out, for these yellows really to stand out nicely. And that's why I'm bringing this value down, and I'm bringing the chroma down too here. And working with a synthetic flat into a couch, you can get quite a lot of control. You can get very sharp edges if you want to. I think it's going to work all right, because it's, I'd already put in the light and the shadow when I put those colours in, just as a broad shape. It's kind of it's coming out okay, I think. There's a suggestion of it turning away from the light already there because the colour was already in there. That's all right. Come out here. But basically these ones are almost entirely in shadow, so I want very different colour there. I want the shadow colour, and they're almost the same value as the background, so I want the background to get quite a bit light around here, to probably about where it is. Joan says, what mixture did you use for the original background? The background is a piece of card that I've painted very roughly, and it's a low chroma orange. It's about that colour there. So what I used was, I started off with raw umber, but it's a little bit more orange than that. I know that doesn't look like an orange, but that's because it's very low chroma. It is in fact orange. So I used raw umber, which is a slightly yellow orange, and then I needed something to move it a little bit round towards orange. So I brought in a bit of this Williamsburg gold brown, because it's also low value, and I wanted low value. And I think, and a little bit of titanium white. I think that was it. Oh, and some black. Yes, do paint with black. Shadow colours. So the colour I really want to get is this in shadow. So what I've done is I've gone slightly more towards an orange yellow, because I've found that especially with yellows they tend towards, in this kind of light where it's interior light and it's a bright day with the light coming in the window reflected off the blue sky, the shadows will move around the hue wheel a little bit. So you could say they're warmer, but I like to be a bit more specific than that and say they're going around towards orange. I need to keep the values up pretty much because I want to keep the values close on the flowers, so I'm going to try this colour here. So it's not randomly picked, you know, I know what hue this is and that the value is slightly down from the lights. So the bit that I want to get is the shadow colour right in the middle of them. And it's quite high chroma, you know. I'm going to try and bring it down with this gold brown. Let's not mess about, I don't have enough paint. I've been looking at dandelions all my life and I've never really noticed before that the little petals that stick out around the outside are a different yellow than the middle. And this is partly why I love painting and partly why I love colour. Find out more detail, what colour things are. This is going too orange now. It's down almost to the value of that chip. I'm going to bring a bit of Michael Harding green gold in just to bring the value down a little bit, hopefully not lose too much chroma, and swing the hue slightly back towards yellow. I'm going to try this. I haven't got all the way down in value yet, but let's try that and see how it looks. And this is like a smudge. Looking at it when you squint down, you know, it's like a smudge really. So I'm going to use a hog filbert. And there's these values are good. I want this the same value as the background here. Just as the flower turns towards the light, it gets slightly, there's a little bit of light. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of the light colour just around the edges. And then we have the shadow colour. The little petals around the outside. Then they come towards the light. So they're not nowhere near as light as these ones, but they do come towards the light and they're slightly lighter than the background. They are dandelions, yes they are. Just common dandelions. And that's all they are. They're coming out everywhere at the moment, and you know they are quite beautiful dandelions. I think. So I want this to get lighter here, where this side of the flower is turning to the light. It has to be nowhere near as light as that, though, because this needs to stand out as being the lightest light. It's all about, you know, the orientation of the plane to the light. And there's much more light here than there is here. These flowers over this side are going to almost disappear, really. Again, I'm not going to try and paint the petals. I just want to paint the shape and get the colours good. There will be the odd little one that's a little bit lighter, sorry, but I'm not going to put that in yet. Dark. Shadow side. I mean, these values, they're all almost the same around here. The differences are just hue and chroma. I find that really fascinating to work with. So the background around there, I definitely want to drop the chroma quite a long way, which of course titanium white will do. I want the value to be the same as that value there, so lighter. This is where I'm sorting out my value relationships on the palette, on the palette. Yeah, that's about the same value. So see how this will work. So it should be just around here, just a little bit darker. And here needs to be light enough that the edge disappears there. Same value. Good. That's nice. It reminds me a little bit of that, it just put me in mind of that Monet painting of the sunrise, you know, where the sun is exactly the same value as the cloud bank that it's coming out of. And it appears to kind of shimmer a little bit and glow. Keep these very sharp edges. Yeah, I've got to lighten it. See, it's the colour, it's about putting the right colour in the right place, the gradient parish often says. It's not about painting every little detail and all the petals. And for the glass, you basically, I always find the best way to paint glass is to paint with pretty much the background colours, but there is often slightly, in the case of this little bottle, which is very clear, that's slightly lighter. Chroma. Depends on the glass though. Little highlight is standing out nicely still. It's good. So I need to think about the cloth now. You know, I want to get everything kind of blocked in so I can see how the whole thing is going to work. I'm a little bit in love with it already. I really like it. My favourite bit, funny enough, is these here because all the values are so close. I mean, it needs this one here for it to work, but read out, can you... Anjari says, can you read out the palette colours, top to bottom? Of course I can. Yes. Titanium White, Michael Harding Bright Yellow Lake, PY3, Michael Harding Yellow Lake, PY74, sometimes called Hansa Yellow. This is Cranfield, Cad Yellow, handmade English paint. It's very similar to Michael Harding. In Winsor & Newton terms, that would be closest to Cad Yellow Pale. Yellow Ochre, Michael Harding Green Gold. No substitute for that, unfortunately. Williamsburg Gold Brown, Quinacridone Gold Brown. I think that's, just check, I think this is a single pigment as well. Oh no, it's two. PO48 and PR206, they're both quinacridones. Quinacridone Rose, which I'm going to use to mix a slight violet colour for the cloth. Ultramarine, which I will also use for that raw umber, and black. Yeah, the excitement when the values start, it is like that. It is when you. I mean, you get there quicker with a small painting as well. You know, when it starts to, you realise that it's just sort of goes and starts to fit together. It is exciting. I find it exciting. Colour is endlessly fascinating. Colour relationships. My yellows here are nowhere near as bright as the yellow in reality. The colours, I think, are much closer to the... I don't know why it is, but every time I put up one of these photos, they always appear slightly different. Colour appears slightly different. I want light and shadow for the cloth. Light. It's a small painting, obviously, but I'm still going to mix a fair amount. I'd rather throw paint away than be fussing about with too thin paint and not get the thing to work. And this, I want to be, the light of the cloth, I want to be lower value than the highlight on the jar. I also want it to be lower chroma. Oop, come back. That's more good for shadow. Too low value. what I do very little of is just kind of grabbing colours and trying to see what works. I'm always thinking about the value relationships, you know. Some stuff does happen without always thinking consciously about it, but most of it is carefully worked out. So that's a very low chroma violet. Let's get a brush with some texture to it. See how that would work. And there's a sharper edge to the shadow there, which I want to keep. The shadow, I like this to be kind of broken and textural. It's just an aesthetic thing. It's not, you know, it doesn't have to be. I'm going to allow that. And the cast shadows there are obviously lower value, and they also tend towards a yellow. Raw umber is a yellow-orange, but it's a bit too orange. So I'm going to bring in some green gold as well. That's a bit too much chroma, but I haven't gone down the value range anywhere near far enough yet, so it will probably pan out. Or not. Thank you, Kathleen. You're very welcome. Did I add black to the violet to lower the chroma? What I did was I mixed ivory black and titanium white to the same value, and then mixed a bit of the near neutral into the violet. I could get away with just ivory black because it's a violet, so it will swing the hue very slightly, but at such a low chroma you won't see it. Alex says, what if for the highest chroma flower you adapt the indirect approach, paint it in white while following the values, let it dry, then glaze it with the purest yellow, controlling the values through quantity of glaze, repeating the process of white, then glaze if necessary. The more white will be underneath and the purest glazes, the higher the chroma. Don't apologise for asking interesting questions, Alex. That's a really good one. Yes, it would. If I put white down first and let it dry, it would get me higher chroma there. I'm sure it would. It would also be a different kind of painting than I generally do, which is not to say better or worse, just a different approach. Yeah, yes, I'm pretty sure you could get. So, you know, I guess you could take something like this, a very direct painting, as a kind of investigation, a colour study, and then you could do another painting from this, you know, which you did using an indirect approach. Yeah, I mean, no, yeah, I'm sure it would work. But for me, I paint directly and simply You know, I'm quite a simple chap, and I just like to paint things, you know, directly more. I guess it's no, is it temperament? I'm not sure. Temperament, possibly, partly. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it would get you high. I don't know how much higher, because this is very opaque. I keep meaning actually to test it and see. Um, uh, it would be higher. I'm just not sure how much. That's not low enough chroma, low enough value. Um, because it's generally accepted that glazing, especially for a high value, high chroma color like this, glazing over white would get you more chroma, but I'm not sure how much, because that's opaque. You know, I deliberately painted it very thickly and then cut into it, rather than trying to paint it, which would probably be disastrous, you know. And I would end up fiddling with it, I would make mistakes, and I would, you know, lose the chroma, and basically it's much better, I think, to cut into opaque paint and keep it fresh, unfiddled with, and high chroma, I'm sure. And this is one of the reasons that I love to paint into a couch, because you can control the edges so quickly and get these really beautiful kind of soft edges. And this just works brilliantly, you know, softening stuff like that. Ah! I shed yellow on it. Oh, that's bad. I thought it was a clean brush, but it had yellow on it. Do not want that colour there. No, it's got to come off. That is frustrating though, because that was coming together nicely, that bit. Heather, if it goes out of focus and comes back in again, it's probably your internet connection struggling a little bit, more than likely. I'll find all those colours again. So frustrating. Try and do a better job of it then. This time and it'd be worthwhile. It's in the wrong place now. I think that's actually the wrong colour. That's too yellow anyway. I need that to go more blue. I'm going to put a little bit of phthalo out. Windsor and green yellow. Windsor green yellow shade, if I can find it. Which I can't, of course. Is it already out? Yes. It's just the wrong colour. Anyway. I like the values. I like where it's going, but I just want things to be right. Thank you, Susan. That's brilliant. She says, looking at colour this way is like having a fresh set of eyes. That is amazing. Oh, I've gone offline again. I think I've gone offline again. So frustrating. I don't know what's wrong with my internet today. It always interests me, like I've painted so little of the flowers, but they have a dandelionness to them, and it's the colour mainly, colour and shape. Now I'm going to carefully try and cut into them at this one a little bit more, refine the shape a little bit here and there, just to get more of an impression of detail than anything. Just to get that. I was getting a bit washed out again. I'm going to bring down the exposure on that camera. The thing I like most about this painting at the moment is that all of this is really close in value, and it's only the chroma is doing the work there, and the hue, you know, and it's giving it a softness that you know, you never know. I mean, I had an idea of how I wanted the color balance to work, and that's the value balance, and that's happening, but didn't really know, you know, how it was going to feel as I went further through. What's really interesting about this dandelions is that the edges of these little petals that come out here are very flat. They're really flat. That's a very distinctive thing, and you couldn't get it by painting it out, I don't think. You've got to paint the colour and then cut back in. Now, one thing that's really interesting about them, do I have a spare? Not really, we'll use this, is there is some in the middle of this one here, just as it comes out of the middle, there are some of these little petals that are in shadow. I'm just going to see if I can pop a couple of them in without making a horrendous mess and having to start again. And it gives just a subtlety to the colour. Just get them, just a couple. It's a very small change. I'm not sure if it's going to show, but just around the edge. I perhaps have painted a bit too thickly there to be able to do it. Yeah, no, it's going all right. And then inside here and this side as they come out, there's some shadow. Some of the petals overlying other ones, and it's creating shadow shapes there. Just a few. It's just putting little bits in to try and show the form a little bit without losing the purity of the colour, you know. And there's some bits I've been waiting for to do around here where there's a few little bits, little accents of colour. Come on. Yes, they're subtle. At the moment, they're not showing at all. This yellow is too translucent. Just a little touch here and there, you know, just. That's not right. The angle is wrong. I didn't expect dandelions to be this enjoyable to paint. I think I may have found a new flower. Let's get some more texture in here. I always think of like a nice bit, you know, some thick paint and texture gives a kind of a physicality to a surface when it's in the light. It makes it appear more solid. Nice thing about small paintings is that you get to a point where you can see something happening just a lot quicker. And it's all, the colour is doing all the work here, you know. There's not much painting going on really. There's not a lot of detail or anything like that. And these are probably, you know, they're a bit, maybe a little bit too high chroma. They look very different from the photo, but they're closer. I wonder if maybe I've got the, I should adjust the camera a little. Maybe the saturation is too high. No, it's not up, actually. I haven't turned it up particularly. I'm not going to mess with this painting anymore because I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out as it is. Just as I think it has a nice feeling at the moment. I don't want to make one little change. Just want a bit more light here. This is where I spoil it, right? Can't. Sometimes I don't know when to stop. This is wrong. This is the wrong shape. The highlight here. Are any of those big brushes watercolor brushes? Cheryl says. Yes, I think, yeah, quite a few of them are. These ones that I use for softening, I think they're watercolor brushes. These ones are Scepter Gold. I think you can use them for a watercolor and acrylic. But yeah, soft watercolor brushes, I use those quite a bit these days. Do like them. No, they're not sable flats, Manjari, they're synthetics. Interesting question. Do we see colour differently? I think there may be some differences. This is my personal opinion. It's not, I'm not saying this is fact. I think there may be some small differences, but I think generally speaking, we see colour largely similarly, although it would be a stretch to say that, there is such a thing as an objective colour that we all see the same, but with the caveat that if we didn't all see generally the same colour, then painting just wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work. So I think we must all see generally the same colour. Most of us anyway, obviously. People who have, I'm just thinking, issues with colour blindness aside, I think to bring this out here a little bit more. Where I mess up the edge of the flower right now. I've got a bit more leeway with this, I feel like now, because it's standing out nicely, that flower in the painting, so and it feels a little bit heavy to me, the transition from the lighter part of the background to the darker part just feels a bit abrupt. Lighten all of that a little bit. It belongs. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Sheila says, are you using synthetic and bristle brushes? Yeah, mostly synthetic, a little bit of bristle around here and bristle for this area down here. This is actually a Rosemary's brush, but I can't recommend them. I use this one when I want some texture because it's splayed badly. These ones I think are much better, Cornelison's, the hogs. So I started it with this one, Cornelison hog. But sometimes if I want more texture, then a brush that hasn't lasted well is not a bad thing. Alex says, have you tried never to blend until everything is almost in place and then blend in only very specific areas that will affect the mood rather than the colours, like keeping the radical strike statement only at the end? I'm not entirely sure I understand what you mean. But that sounds like a very different approach than I usually paint. I'm not 100% sure what you mean though. You mean like do everything really soft and then bring in the strokes at the end? I couldn't do these flowers that way. The only way I could have got these flowers to work like this is to paint the general shapes first and then cut into them with the background. There's no other way I could have done them. If I'd softened these first and then painted into them, I couldn't have got these shapes. I couldn't have got those hard edges. I don't think, no. Tammy says, why did you choose phthalo blue versus the ultramarine blue? It's actually Windsor green, which is a phthalo. It's more of a green because it's much higher chroma. And I already had a low chroma colour on there and I wanted more chroma. So whatever I put on there next was going to mix with what was already there. So I overshot the chroma deliberately and I used the phthalo to get me there quickly, whereas the ultramarine I don't think would have done it. Oh, we seem to be popping on and off a little bit, don't we, at the moment? Sorry, I got involved in painting there and I didn't really stay up with the messages too much. Yeah, I think we're a bit stop and start today. YouTube is generally better, Joan. Keep having to switch back. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the internet today. I think we might have a problem with our internet here. A little bit. No problem, Helen. See you later. Yes, exactly. I meant to say that, Nigel. You're absolutely right. Dandelions are vital as the first food of the season for bees. I also have a lot of bees around the little primroses. Yes, this may be a new obsession. I'm definitely going to be painting some more dandelions. Yeah, definitely going to be doing that.